I was in a toxic and abusive relationship with my ex, Kyan, for 2 years. Living in a rough neighborhood with my single mom, I felt safer with him because he was a big guy. However, his controlling behavior and mistreatment made it difficult to live. Finally, I mustered the courage to break up with him over text because I feared his reaction if I did it in person. His response was explosive, filled with anger and curses. Worried about my safety, I retreated to bed early that night. Around 1 a.m., I woke up to a strange sound outside my room. Thinking it was my mom, I checked, but she wasn't home. I became suspicious that Kyan had used the spare key we kept in the backyard to enter the house. Worried, I called my mom, who was aware of the breakup, but she thought it was just house noises. As I returned to my room, I discovered my beloved cat, Nola, lifeless on my bed. I suspected Kyan had killed her to punish me. Panicked, I locked myself in my room and called 911, whispering about Kyan's intrusion and the loss of my cat. The operator advised me to stay in the closet until the police arrived. When the police came, they couldn't find Kyan as he likely left unnoticed. Despite showing them Nola's body and the text from him, they couldn't arrest him without concrete evidence. My mom had the locks changed, and we obtained an order of protection against him. In court, the judge granted us a temporary order of protection, ensuring our safety. Thankfully, I never saw Kyan again after that, but the experience left me haunted by the realization that he might have been watching me from the shadows during that night. Story 2. In 2014, during and shortly after my stay at a mental hospital, something happened to me. But before I share the story, I need to provide some background information about myself so you can understand the state I was in at that time. I am a 31-year-old woman from Germany. I was originally born in Bosnia and came to Germany as a result of the Bosnian War in the 90s. My father was an alcoholic who married my mother for her money and made it clear that he wanted us to stay away from him. Growing up, I experienced years of mental and physical abuse, bullying at school, and the responsibility of taking care of my broken mother and older brother while trying to appear strong. All these experiences left me emotionally overwhelmed, but I kept my feelings suppressed. In 2014, everything changed. After a particularly difficult breakup and experiencing bullying at work, I reached my breaking point. I had a nervous breakdown which manifested as days filled with tears, lack of appetite, sleeplessness, and confinement to my house. It was only when my mother noticed my condition and had me hospitalized that I received the help I needed. The diagnosis revealed that I was suffering from PTSD, major depression, and borderline personality disorder. Now, let's get to the story. During my second month in the hospital, I met someone online whom we called Kevin for the sake of the story. Initially, Kevin seemed like a nice guy, and our conversations were pleasant. He shared his own struggles with depression and other mental illnesses, which strangely made him more attractive to me. We texted frequently and got along well. As my therapy progressed, I was allowed to go home on weekends, so Kevin and I planned to meet up during one of those weekends. I was excited about it given my vulnerable state at the time. However, to my disappointment, Kevin stopped replying as soon as I returned home. I waited anxiously but heard nothing from him until the following day when I went back to the hospital. He apologized for making me wait, citing his busy schedule. Unsettled by his behavior, I decided to respond to his messages in the hospital's fenced yard, seeking some privacy. It was already dark outside, but I felt an uneasy sensation of being watched. Although I couldn't see anyone, I heard strange shuffling sounds nearby. I dismissed them, assuming it was just the animals moving around. However, I suddenly felt acutely aware of my isolation. I headed back, followed by more eerie noises, which I chose to ignore. Fast forward about a week later, Kevin and I finally met in person. Initially, there were no obvious signs of strangeness, aside from the fact that he was a mysterious guy with mental health issues, which, ironically, I found intriguing. We spent time together, talking and sitting in my small apartment. However, as time went on, Kevin's behavior became increasingly odd. It began subtly, with him peering at me from the doorway when I left the room or peeking behind the shower curtain while I showered. Feeling uncomfortable, I asked him to stop, but the strange presence persisted during my showers and while I changed clothes. Moreover, he started treating my dog, Isaac, unkindly, even pushing him away for no reason and insulting him. There were moments when he acted jealous as well. I attempted to discuss these concerns with him, but he brushed them off, dismissing my worries as figments of my imagination. The final straw came when Kevin suggested that I get rid of my dog so that he could be the only one looking at me from that point onward. It was a bizarre and unsettling request, and I realized he was dead serious. Having reached my limit, I ended the relationship. Thankfully, he eventually moved on, and I felt an immense relief, as if I had escaped from a potentially dangerous situation. However, about a month later, the stalking began. Occasionally, I would see Kevin's car parked near my workplace or my home, with no one inside. Initially, I brushed it off as annoyance, but it gradually started to make me anxious. The same feeling I had when he stood behind the shower curtain returned whenever I walked home from work. I even caught glimpses of him disappearing behind corners, although I had no solid proof. Isaac, my dog, would growl in certain directions, confirming my suspicions.
However, since Kevin seemed to be afraid of dogs, he kept his distance, which made the situation somewhat more bearable.
This continued for nearly a year, but eventually it came to an end, or at least it significantly diminished. In the years that followed, I received cryptic messages from him occasionally, but I no longer saw or sensed his presence. Although this happened a long time ago, I still don't feel comfortable going anywhere without my dog by my side, even after moving far away from that disturbing individual. Let's move to story 3. My husband and I live in a ranch-style house, while my father, who's turning 84 soon, resides in a nursing home about 15 minutes away. A few months ago, I received a call from the nursing home, informing me of a fire in the electrical room, resulting in an evacuation. My father would be temporarily relocated to another facility about 40 minutes away. Given his dementia and my regular visits, I decided to let him live with us temporarily to avoid further confusion. The first week went smoothly, with my husband and I taking turns watching my father. However, the facility remained closed for much longer than anticipated. One evening, when my husband was out with friends, I was alone with my dad. Later that night, I heard footsteps in the hallway and saw my dad walking past my room. However, I then noticed him coming out of the bathroom, leaving me puzzled about who was in his bed. When I went to investigate, the person in his bed vanished. My husband later confirmed that he wasn't the one in the house at the time.
We then discovered that the front door was wide open, despite us remembering locking it earlier.
Feeling uneasy, we searched the house and found the basement window screen cut open. Panicked, we called the police, who arrested my abusive ex-husband, who had broken in. He had previously threatened me, and I had filed a restraining order against him. Thankfully, my husband was able to subdue him until the police arrived. Though my ex-husband is now in jail, we installed a home security system to ensure our safety and peace of mind. The incident was deeply unsettling, knowing that he had invaded our home and laid in what he thought was my bed, waiting for me to come out of the bathroom. Despite the troubling experience, I'm grateful that everyone is safe and justice has been served.